We're quite interested in sort of the story behind the story. But when we started our global conversation with the leaders that we interviewed around the world, we asked them, can you define what culture is? And they pretty much all said the same thing. Okay, it's how we do stuff around here. You know, it's the behaviors, it's the energy, it's the things we share, it's the rituals we have in our business. So that was pretty consistent across the board. But the premise that we wanted to work with was culture isn't just about having people that are great assets in your business. It's about how those people work together that actually deliver value. So it's fine to say we've got great talent, but how do they work together? So we looked and explored, and we found sort of 4 myths that we think kind of get in the way of people to actually believing that they can use culture to drive growth. And I'm going to talk you through what those 4 myths were. Okay, so the first one is that culture is all about having a fun place to work. Okay, it's great here, it's all about beanbags and slides and fruit bowls and dogs in the office. You know, I started my career in broadcasting, and if you would have asked anyone what culture was, they would have said, it's the parties, because we all get shit-faced, okay? And that's true, that was a feature of the culture, but it wasn't exactly what the culture was, okay? If you really want to know what the culture is, you need to look at the values, your purpose, what you stand for. And you know, it's companies like Google that put slides in their office that's kind of changed that perception for us, that it's all about fun. So where does that myth come from? Well, the myth comes from this idea that the fun is in the environment, not in the work. So how do we start to make the work the fun? How do we start to see the work as the joy? Myth number 2, okay? If it can't be measured, it's not important. So this goes back to the business case question. Who had the business case question? Yeah. So if we can't measure it, what's the ROI? What's the ROI on our people, right? Well, measuring culture can be pretty hard, can't it? But if you only measure the outcomes of your business, you can get into the toxic culture situation. We only need to look at Wells Fargo, we can look at Uber, we're going to talk about them again later, right? If we're only driving a behavior towards a certain outcome, then we have a problem. So how do we start to measure the behaviors, the things that actually make our business work, the way that we work together? So yes, it's hard, but are there new things that we can start to measure that actually starts to pull the levers of potential and performance? The next myth was all around this notion that, well, I have to have culture, I have to understand it, because that's how I'm going to get people to work really hard. You know, we need to drive performance in this business. We need to optimize people. Well, the Japanese have a word for it, and that optimization isn't really working. How many of you feel overworked and stressed? Okay, just one, that's great. But it's true, and I bet you if I asked any of you on a given day, how was your day today? I bet you you'd say, you know what, I was really busy, right? Well, we need to see that actually busy is a status symbol, right? And if we can start to shift that mindset, we can start to look at how do we actually optimize ourselves in a state of flow rather than thinking how do we drive people to work harder. The final one was the myth was it shouldn't be written down. We shouldn't actually capture culture because it's a mystical mist. And if we put it into a bottle, then we're just going to ruin it, right? How do we actually start to capture something, though, that we can transfer down the line? And when we met Amy's Kitchen, this is Rachel and Andy Berliner from Amy's Kitchen, you might know their products, they said, we're a family business, and we have to start to write this stuff down because we might not be here for very much longer. And we're a family business and we want to pass it down the line. They were afraid to write it down, but when they understood that if we can write it down, we can teach it to people. That dream that we have about our purposeful business can live on, that was the game changer for them. Okay? So the myth is that complexity is valuable, right? We are a mystical beast and no one should understand us. But at its heart is a deep fear that if the culture is clear, we as leaders will have to be accountable to it. And we're going to talk about that when we go through our exercises later today. But fear, as coaches, is something that we have to work with all the time with our clients. It's at any point when something is a barrier in a business, there's probably a fear deep-seated, and as a leader, they carry that fear through into the context of the business. So there's lots of different fears that we've looked at. We can see things about, you know, losing, fear of loss, fear of not being relevant anymore, fear of actually being accountable for something. So what we do is work with our clients to actually work with those fears and turn them into opportunities.